The Vikings trailing San Francisco by a point, less than half a minute on the clock. Tommy Kramer unloads and finds Ahmad Rashad for his fourth touchdown reception, and the Vikings pull it out 28-22 over San Francisco. Today in Chicago, Kramer faces his former teammate Alan Page, who registered 2 of the Bears' 6 sacks against Green Bay a week ago, as Chicago opened with a 6-3 victory. It's the Vikings and the Bears from Soldier Field in Chicago.
The NFL on CBS. Today's game is sponsored by the Miller Brewing Company, brewers of Miller High Life. If you've got the time, we've got the beer. Ford Motor Company, building tomorrow's cars today. And by Sperry, we understand how important it is to listen.
Sunny, windy, and sold out Soldier Field in Chicago. Both the Vikings and the Bears come in here with records of 1-0. Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Costas, along with Johnny Morris. We've told you about the exploits of Tommy Kramer, but on the Bears side, John, problems at quarterback.
Yes, Mike Phipps has been sick for 2 days. He's missed practice for a couple of days. He can't seem to hold anything down in his stomach, but he is listed as a starter. He's going to go and see how long he can go and see if he's well. If not, we'd have Vince Evans or Bob Avellini in as far as the quarterback situation for the Bears.
One or the other. Important Central Division game. Let's take a look down on the field. The Bears are going to receive. Rick Danmeyer will kick it off for the Minnesota Vikings. Back deep is Brian Baschnagel, waiting just a step beyond the goal line. In his 2 seasons with the Vikings, Danmeyer has never had a kickoff which was not returned. In other words, he does not kick them into and through the end zone. Usually you get a run back against Danmeyer. Special teams play has always been important in the series between the Bears and the Vikings. Minnesota has won 11 of the last 13 meetings. The last 6 have all been decided in some way or another by special teams play. Ricky Watts, one of the up men, takes that one on a bounce and breaks outside. He's across the 30 before being cut down at around the 32. The tackle made by Robert Miller. So Ricky Watts gives the Bears fairly decent field position with a 22-yard kickoff return. Phipps is their quarterback. Dave Williams, in place of the injured Roland Harper, joins Walter Payton at the running back spots. Scott and Richards, the outside men. Mike Cobb has taken the tight end job away from Greg Lotta this year. First play from scrimmage from the 32-yard line. Payton sets up behind Williams, and Golden Richards goes in motion. They pitch it back to Walden, who carried 36 times for 125 yards a week ago in the victory over the Pack, and he gets about 3 this time.
It should be a little easier for him today because last week it was about 95 degrees down on the field. Today it's a lot cooler. The nip of fall has come as it's about 60 degrees, real nice for football.
The Chicago offensive line, and it's important that this group has been together for quite some time. They know how to block for Walden.
Yes, they've been as a unit for the last 4 or 5 years, and they had good blocking on that last one. Ted Albrecht did a good job on Jim Marshall.
It's 2nd and 7 from the Chicago 35. Opening minute of quarter number 1, Soldier Field in Chicago. Payton sets up alongside Williams. And Phipps will put it in the air for the first time. Under some pressure, incomplete. Intended for Williams. Mark Mullaney might have deflected that. He was putting pressure on Mike Phipps.
You think Dave Williams is under a little pressure. The Bears have lost all those fullbacks. Roland Harper's out, and Earl is out. Skabinski out with a knee injury. And Dave Williams, who they just picked up last week, has got to play that fullback slot. As you see, the defensive lineup of the Minnesota Vikings. They're the 3 linebackers. Scott Studwell getting the start again after a great game last week for Minnesota. And there is the secondary.
Studwell playing in place of the injured Jeff Seaman. And you notice that Nate Allen is also starting at the right cornerback spot. He's in place of Bobby Bryant, who's had some trouble this week with a kidney stone.
Payton is flanked way out in motion, inward.
A 3rd down play for Phipps. Firing over the middle, and it might have been Walter who pulled it in. It was a great catch by Payton for the Chicago first down.
And there's a new formation for the Chicago Bears. They had Walter Payton way out wide as a wide receiver. He went in motion to the inside and then straight down the field and turned in. And Phipps waited with good pass protection and watched the glue fingers of Walter Payton with Paul Krause all over him. A first down for the Chicago Bears. That is something new as far as formations are concerned. Let's see if they do more of that.
the Vikings secondary has been suspect in the past couple of years. And Bobby Bryant, as we mentioned, is out with Nate Allen in this afternoon, so that's one further problem, perhaps. Golden Richards in motion from the 49-yard line of Minnesota, and that play goes nowhere. First carry for Dave Williams. He toted the ball only 5 times a week ago and gained but 15 yards against Green Bay. Matt Blair, the left side linebacker, is credited with the tackle.
We'll see how the Bears attack the Vikings. Minnesota's allowed around 70% of their passes against them to be completed, which is a very high average. DeBerg completed 70% last week against the Vikings, and that's a high percentage, and a lot of passes were completed against Minnesota during the exhibition when they went 0-4. So let's see if the Bears go to passing more than they have in the past few games, I should say.
On the other hand, the Vikings held San Francisco to under 100 yards on the ground last week. Phipps flips it out to Payton, and unless Walter can slither away, this is going nowhere, and it's a loss of about 5 or 6. James Duck White made the tackle behind the line of scrimmage. It'll be 3rd down, and we'll call it 16 yards to go.
Well, I'm sure Minnesota Viking fans are wondering, was last week's second half for real? They had such a bad exhibition season, 0-4. They scored more points in the second half last week than they did the whole exhibition season, and they had problems getting points on the board. Will they continue with that kind of a surge offensively? They're going to need to, I think, to beat the Bears today, because the Bears are a ball control type of team.
Mike Phipps, who connected on 15 of 25 a week ago against Green Bay, he has 3 wide receivers in the lineup right now on this 3rd and 16 play. Backpedaling and unloading. Incomplete, and the Bears will have to punt. 11:39 to play in the first quarter.
We should mention about Bobby Bryant not being in the lineup because he had a kidney stone removed yesterday. And it's kind of unexpected, and he's not going to be out for too long. They say that maybe he can be back in a week or 2. I don't know how you can when you have a kidney. Of course, I've never had a kidney stone removed. Have you?
I can honestly say I haven't. There's Jimmy Edwards standing at around the 10-yard line. Bob Parsons will punt. Kicked 4 times last week for an average of 41 yards against the Packers. Edwards at about the 14. And cut down at the 10.
Mike Spivey.
So Spivey with some excellent special teams play after a 41-yard punt by Bob Parsons. This telecast is presented by authority of the NFL, and it's intended for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or other use of this telecast without the express written consent of the Chicago Bears and the National Football League is prohibited. Tommy Kramer, succeeding Franz Harkinson at the quarterback spot for the Minnesota Vikings, faces 1st and 10 from just beyond his own 10-yard line. He tries Chuck Foreman on 1st down, and Foreman is pushed back after a short gain. Alan Page gets credit for the tackle. There's their backfield. Kramer, who was 21 of 34 a week ago for almost 300 yards, and he threw for 4 touchdowns against the 49ers. Ricky Young and Chuck Foreman, his running backs. Bob Tucker, his tight end. Doug Cunningham in place of the injured Sammy White at 1 wide receiver spot. Ahmad Rashad, who had the big game against the 49ers, is the other wide receiver. On 2nd down, Kramer, rolling right, might have been a busted play, gets nothing.
Boy, Jim Osborne got through there in a hurry, number 68, to kind of bust that play up, and it went nowhere as the Vikings will be in a 3rd down passing situation. Let's see if they go to Ahmad Rashad, who got those 4 touchdown passes last week. That's a lot for one game for any receiver, let me tell you.
As a matter of fact, the last time, as we look at the offensive line of the Minnesota Vikings, Dennis Swilley stepping in from Mick Tingelhoff, and Ron Yary seems like he's been there since the inception of the franchise. We'll tell you more about the 4-touchdown game which Rashad enjoyed a week ago next time we get a chance. Meantime, 3rd and 10 from the 11. Kramer has time to throw, and incomplete. Intended for Doug Cunningham. The Vikings fail to record a 1st down, and they'll have to punt from deep in their own territory.
They'll be punting with the wind. The flags are going, I'd say 20, 25 miles an hour, it looks like, so he should have the wind behind him for this punt.
Greg Coleman kicked 5 times for an average of less than 34 yards a week ago against the 49ers. There's a look at Coleman. And his net average was only 27.2. Steve Schubert is the deep man standing at the Chicago 45. And Coleman will kick out of his own end zone. Meets it at about the goal line. Spiraling kick. Schubert at midfield shakes a tackle, tries to come outside. He is in Minnesota territory at about the 48. Fred McNeil made the tackle. A 39-yard punt and a return of only 2 or 3 yards by Schubert. They spot the ball at the Minnesota 49, 1st and 10 for Chicago. 9:52 to play in the first quarter of what has thus far been a scoreless game. Scott and Richards, the wide receivers. Dave Williams and Walter Payton, the running backs for Mike Phipps. And here's Payton. Nice hole opens up, and Payton drags some tacklers to about the 44. Doug Sutherland on the tackle.
That could have been a big hole here, but Doug Sutherland makes a saving tackle as they put the little trap on there, brought Reeve Sorey through as he trapped Studwell, and here's Sutherland, number 69, just making the saving tackle there, or Walter might have been able to get into the secondary and put a juke on a couple of people and gotten away, but a pretty good trap executed by the Bears.
2nd and 5, and a look at Payton, who needs 227 more yards to pass Rick Caceres and become the all-time Bears leading ground gainer. Richards in motion. Dave Williams, short of a first down as he got a couple. It'll be a 3rd and approximately 3 yards situation for Mike Phipps.
How would you like to be Dave Williams, having had played behind O.J. Simpson, and then he played behind Walter Payton, and now he's playing a fullback slot when that's not really his normal position. But the Bears didn't even have a fullback for last week, and Payton still gained 125 yards. So let's see what happens.
From the 40-yard line, 3rd down and a long one. Long count, and they ask Williams to get it, and apparently he has.
He's got it. Let's take a look at Williams from ground level. Just a regular tough action, hard-nosed football trying to get the yard, and he got it by a few inches. First down for the Bears at the 39.
Golden Richards coming in from the bench. Neil Armstrong calls all the plays for Mike Phipps, Johnny.
Yes, and the same thing holds true for the Vikings as they send in the plays. They never used to do that with Fran Tarkenton, but with Kramer being relatively young, they want to call the plays.
Inside 8 minutes on the first quarter clock. Walter Payton will try and take it around the right side, but the Vikings are waiting for him. First man there was strong safety Tommy Hannon. Hannon played the free safety spot a year ago. They've moved him to the strong side this year and reinserted Paul Krause as the starting free safety, and Krause is still looking for that one interception he needs to tie Emlyn Tunnell for the all-time NFL record.
He's waited a long time. He said he didn't sleep after the game last week because he dropped one that he should have had, but he didn't get one all last year, and then of course now last week he had a chance to get one.
Credit Walter with just a yard on that last carry. 2nd down and 9. Phipps with the fake and the throw with good protection, but overthrown. It'll be 3rd and 9. Intended for James Scott. And some of the fans expressed their displeasure with Phipps.
Well, actually, he did the right thing in that particular case because Nate Allen was right there. If the ball had been down, he might have had an interception because Scott was covered that time. Minnesota Vikings, so many years they have frustrated the Bears. They've won 11 out of the last 13 games between these teams. And as you mentioned, the last 6 games, a total of 18 points have separated these teams, and the Vikings won 4 of those, usually on the special teams with the kicking game.
Usually blocked punts or field goals, fake plays off punts or field goals. Those have been the deciding factors historically in the games between these teams. 3rd down, heavy pressure. Phipps gets it away, and it's complete to Brian Baschnagel. And Baschnagel is across the 30-yard line.
A good play by the Bears. They had Peyton up at the top side with Golden Richards, and they cleared the zone, and Brian Bashnagel came right underneath and came across the field and was wide open, and they're very close to the first down. Good play by Bashnagel.
But it's going to be 4th and 1. The fans want them to go for it. Neil Armstrong has other ideas. Enter Bob Thomas for a field goal try. Thomas hit 17 of 22 a year ago, 2 of 3 last week to win the game against Green Bay.
And he's usually pretty good from this distance, but he does have a strong wind against him.
Bashnagel will hold at about the 37, a 47-yard attempt by Thomas, the former Notre Dame star, and it is short and no good.
Did you see that wind slow that ball up?
It was on line, but short. And so the Chicago drive comes up empty, and with 6:22 remaining in the first quarter at Soldier Field, we still have no score.
He's down there on that field.
Okay, Tommy Kramer could not generate a first down last time the Vikings had the ball. He'll put it in the air on his first try here, and it's picked off. The Bears have the football as Terry Schmidt comes up with the interception. And once again, Chicago is in Minnesota territory.
The same as last week. This here was a zone as Terry Schmidt came up to cover the short zone. I think Kramer was trying to hit Chuck Foreman, number 44, but they got messed up, and there was Schmidt right up there in the short zone, takes the interception, and the Chicago Bears are putting lots of pressure on the Minnesota Vikings early in this game.
Now from the 27-yard line with 6:14 to play in the first quarter. Every time the Bears have had the ball, they have gotten into Minnesota territory. So far, they have nothing to show for it. Richards in motion. Walter Payton. Got one good block, but not enough. They turn him down behind the line of scrimmage. John Turner came up from his left cornerback spot, and he gets credit for the initial tackle.
Good play by Turner. He came up, he saw that big Noah Jackson, number 65, the pulling guard in his way. He got in there and still made the tackle.
Green Bay still hasn't scored a touchdown this year. They trail the Saints 3-zip in the first. Giants lead the Cardinals, and the Cardinals have had trouble the past few years playing in New York. Peyton lost 2. Second down, 12 from the 29. Phipps back and under pressure. They may get him. He slips away, and finally down he goes. Phipps was not sacked at all last week against Green Bay, but this time Minnesota got him. I think it was Mark Mullaney who finally pulled him down, John.
But it was the blitz here as Jeff Seaman came through to put pressure on, and so did Studwell, and Phipps had to get out of it. They were trying to throw a screen pass to Walter Payton. Phipps got away from that, and you're going to see Mark Mullaney make the tackle, but it was that blitzing linebacker pressure that ruined the play and set it up for a good defensive play by the Vikings. Mullaney with a nice headlong dive to make the tackle. Good play by the Vikings.
Third down and 22. First time this year that Phipps has been sacked. Now from the 38 of Minnesota. We move inside. 5 minutes to play in the first quarter. 2 wide receivers on the left side. And one of them is Payton, moving in motion and going out on the pattern. Phipps having trouble getting away and gets rid of it in desperation, incomplete. James White was putting the pressure on him, and once again they use Payton out in that wide receiver set.
Yes, that is something new as we look at Detroit leading Washington by a score of 3-0 in the first period. Getting back to that rush, the Vikings are put some good pressure on the last few plays. Good pressure.
And the Patriots trying to bounce back from an overtime loss on Monday night out in front of the Jets 7-0. Edwards is the deep man for Minnesota. Once again, the Bears are stymied. Parsons has to punt from near midfield. High hanging kick. Edwards lets it drop, and the Bears are going to down it inside the 10. So it's bad field position once again. After a 29-yard punt for Parsons, the Vikings will start inside their own 10-yard line. Wonder if she'll be watching the U.S. Open after the game. Gerulaitis and McEnroe in the men's finals. Austin and Everett Lloyd among the ladies. Right here on CBS. From the 10, first and 10. Ricky Young carries back to the line of scrimmage. Dan Hampton on the tackle. #1 draft choice. 6'5" and 256. The rookie from Arkansas has taken a job away from Tommy Hart along that front four for Chicago.
And if he keeps playing like that, Ron Yeri's going to be in trouble. That time he handled Ron Yeri very well. Dan Hampton, who's done pretty well against the run, but he hasn't developed his pass rush that much lately.
The Bears used 2 first-round picks for defensive linemen. The other was Al Harris out of Arizona State, but he's on the injured reserve list right now with some knee problems. Kramer keeps it on the ground on second down. Doug Plank in on the stop as once again Ricky Young carry. Young, believe it or not, is the uncle of the Bears' Walter Payton. And the Jets fall further behind New England, 14-0. Ricky Young rushed for 417 yards last year, but more impressively caught 88 passes from Fran Tarkenton, who threw a lot to his backs, for over 700 yards on those pass plays.
It looks like man for man down here, but they're going to run the ball.
Young again on 3rd and 2. Tom Hicks made the stop. They had to get to the 20-yard line. There's a flag on the play, and it's against Minnesota, I believe. Young arguing about where the ball should be spotted, but I think it's academic because the flag is down.
Offense, number 34, illegal motion. 3rd down.
Young was in motion, says referee Fred Silva, and here are the other officials working with Silva this afternoon.
Well, this is definitely a passing situation for Minnesota, deep in their own territory. Plus, they are throwing, however, with the wind. You have Rashad on Virgil Livers. It appears to be a man-to-man situation, although they have 5 backs in there now.
3rd and 7 from the 13. Clock shows 3:18 to play in the first. Foreman trying to get the 7 yards they need, and he won't. Alan Page, his former Viking teammate, wrapped him up, and the Vikes again will have to punt.
The Bears had a lot of people up in the line there. You see Bruce Herron, 51 there, and there's Alan Page, and there was just no place for Foreman to go. Too many people, too many Chicago Bears, and that was a passing situation.
Steve Schubert waiting back deep at around his own 40-yard line. Greg Coleman standing inside his 5 to punt for the Vikings. The entire first quarter has been played in Minnesota territory. What a booming boot by Coleman, who was also hit on the play, and a flag is down. Schubert brings it back to around the Chicago 35, but Lenny Walderscheid, going for the block, ran into Coleman, and the flag was thrown.
Coleman picks up the flag. He says, here it is. I earned it. I earned it. He hit me, and it's going to be the Minnesota Vikings ball.
Here it is again.
Okay, let's watch Coleman as they came from both sides. You can see Walderscheid from the left side comes in right here and hits him. No question about it, because the punter is ruled vulnerable, and he was vulnerable. His feet were up in the air, and they're going to call it against the Chicago Bears, and that's a big penalty because Minnesota retains possession with much better field position.
Fred Silva will make it official.
Personal foul, running into the kicker, number 37.
And so the Vikings keep it with 2:28 remaining in the first. After our tennis coverage tonight, 60 minutes, all in the family, and then one day at a time, rounding out the entertainment lineup on CBS. That's following the coverage of the U.S. Open tennis final. Keeping it on the ground and pitching it back to Ricky Young, and Young, with some running room, has a nice gain on first down before strong safety Doug Plank stopped him. Gary Fensick is out of the lineup with a sprain of his left elbow. Fensick normally would be starting in the Chicago secondary.
And they've had to make some adjustments with Doug Plank playing the strong safety and Walderscheid coming in to play the free safety. So the Bears have some people in different positions than they normally play, and we'll see if the Vikings try and take advantage of it.
The Giants increased their lead on the Big Red, 14-zip. Young got 7. It's second down 3 from the 29. Pitch it back to Ricky Young again. First down yardage for Minnesota. Alan Page on the tackle, but for the first time, the Vikings begin to move the ball.
They aren't dumb. They saw that the middle of the Bear defensive line was holding those runs by the Vikings, so they've decided to let's go outside. Let's get outside all that junk in the middle. And there is Ricky Young making some yardage and the first down, and I believe it's Minnesota's first down, isn't it?
Young has carried 4 times for 22 yards so far. Just over a minute to play in a scoreless first quarter. Kramer with a short drop and quick sideline throw. He finds Ahmad Rashad, and Rashad is pushed out of bounds by Virgil Livers.
Rashad is limping a little bit, or some kind of a problem with his right leg. Boy, that would be a blow if he twisted his knee a little bit, but looks like he's going to shake it out there. He had such a great game last week. All kinds of touchdown passes. One short one where he deked somebody out. He had a nice deep one. He just did a little bit of everything for Minnesota.
They got 9 on that little sideline pattern, bringing up 2nd down and 1 yard to go. And with 1:07 on the clock, the officials say hold on.
Rashad is still holding his leg.
Let's listen to Fred Silva. Well, Freddie didn't turn the microphone on.
Either that, because it couldn't be our equipment. It has to work all the time. It's Bud Grant.
Bud Grant, winner of 6 consecutive Central Division titles, 10 of the last 11 with his Vikings. He's appeared in 4 Super Bowls. Of course, they've lost them all, but that's another story. Well, nothing has changed. It's still 2nd and 1 from the 45. Cincinnati and Buffalo zip in the second.
Come on, defense! Get that ball!
And Chuck Foreman is hit hard, and I don't think he got the first down. Jim Osborne met him immediately.
Well, the Vikings have had no luck up the middle. They're going to probably, they have a 3rd and 1. They're almost going to be forced to. Watch Jim Osborne, number 68. He plays off the block by Wes Hamilton, 61, and just jams it up and stops it. Just individual effort there by Jim Osborne.
For the first time in 4 years, Chuck Foreman did not gain over 1,000 yards last season. And he had only 33 yards last week against San Francisco. There's some concern in Minnesota as to whether or not Foreman will ever regain his once fantastic form. He tries for the first down over the top, and it's going to be very, very close.
Well, he went about it the right way. Take the dive and get up and over all that traffic, and it's, as you said, Bob, it's going to be very, very close. And it looks like he might be short by maybe an inch and a quarter.
By an inch and a quarter, huh? You can be that precise?
Well, I always like to take a guess at it. I haven't got my ruler with me, but it's going to be very, very close.
I think an inch and a quarter was exactly right.
Well, let's see what Minnesota does with that.
The Redskins have a 7-3 lead on the Lions. They're in the second at the Silverdome in Pontiac. 4th and less than a foot.
Okay, they're going to go for it.
From their own 46-yard line. This will be the last play of the first quarter. Everybody bunched up at the line of scrimmage. And I think he got it.
There's a flag down.
A penalty marker is down, as Johnny said. And we'll have to wait and see what the call will be. But on yardage alone, it looked like the Vikings got it. The Bears were offside, and it will be a Minnesota first down. Clock is stopped with 3 seconds to play in the first quarter.
So Tommy Kramer in charge out there, number 9, as he talks with the officials. You think he has big shoes to fill?
Offside. First.
This is the first time the Vikings have been in Chicago territory. They're at the Bear 49 with 3 seconds to play in the first quarter. Bears threatened several times in the opening 15 minutes, failed to score each time. Now it's the Vikings' turn to make some noise. They pitch it back to Foreman on the last play of the opening period. He gets a couple before being brought down by Jerry Muckenstern. The gun sounds, and that's the end of the first quarter at Soldier Field in Chicago with the score. The Minnesota Vikings, nothing, and the Chicago Bears, nothing. We're coming right back.
Coach Neil Armstrong, now in his second year, had a rough year last year. The Bears went through an 8-game losing streak. He formerly played for the old Chicago Cardinals when they won a couple of world championships back in the late 40s. Now has the Chicago Bears.
As we open the second quarter, Tommy Kramer and the Vikings have 2nd and 8 from the Chicago 47. Kramer with good protection. Over the middle. Got his man. Chuck Foreman slipping out of the backfield for a big gain. He is inside the Chicago 30. Lenny Walterscheid spun him down.
There's Chuck Foreman. People said he's been a little bit overweight. His running average has gone down. But look at the pass blocking here as Foreman comes out of the backfield. Kramer double pumps. Got that strong arm and got it down there as Foreman found the slot and was finally tackled by Lenny Walterscheid.
Foreman goes out. The Vikings have been using that messenger system with their running backs, shifting backs on each play to bring in the play for Tommy Kramer. And they keep it on the ground with their number 1 draft choice, Ted Brown. Brown, the rookie out of North Carolina State. The 4th leading ground gainer in NCAA history, behind only Tony Dorsett, Archie Griffin, and Ed Marinaro.
Let's watch the Bears middle linebacker, Tom Hicks, as he reacted to the inside. Ron Yeri comes off the line and ties into Hicks to slow him down on his pursuit to the sidelines, and that kept him out of the play.
Now the Vikings at the 10-yard line of the Bears, opening minute of the second quarter. And on the first down carry, they get a couple. Ricky Young with the ball. We're using Young quite a bit this afternoon in the early going, John. More so than Foreman, actually.
Well, they also have been alternating their backs quite a bit. As you know, they send the plays in. But Ricky Young's a good back, and this game has kind of turned around here a little bit. The Vikings moving the ball, and it's been to the outside. They got away from the traffic inside. They're moving to the outside and getting good yardage on Chicago.
2nd and goal, we'll call it, from the 8. It may be technically possible to get a first down on the 1-inch line, but for all intents and purposes, it's 2nd and goal from the 8, and now they're down around the 2-yard line. Ricky Young again.
Kind of a draw. Watch that the line there as they cross block there. It comes on a little misdirection back across the thing. Goodrum throws a good block, and just good blocking all around before the Bears get there. What's happening is the Vikings are executing on their line blocking now.
Jerry Myers and Ron Rideouch come in along the defensive front for the Bears on 3rd and goal from the 2. Young in motion. Kramer rolling right. May keep it himself. Touchdown, Minnesota. Tommy Kramer.
Pretty good call because you expect him to go up the middle, but it was 3rd and 2. They decided it would probably be jammed up. They took both the backs out as Kramer rolled out. Now you'll see Foreman and Young both go into the end zone as he has an option here. The Bears are forced to play for the pass receivers. There's Tucker with his hands up, but Kramer just took it in and went up and over Virgil Livers and got the touchdown. The Vikings take the lead 6-0.
Enter Rick Danmeyer, who was successful on all 4 of his point-after-touchdown tries last week against San Francisco. Out of the hold of Paul Krause, he makes it 7-0 Vikings. So the Bears pretty much dominated the first quarter. They were unable to score, but the Vikings get on the board here on this play.
There's Spivey playing the pass receiver, Ricky Young, out, and then he has to react, number 47, and it's just too late. And a good play by the Minnesota Vikings. They have taken the lead 7-0 in the second quarter.
The record breaks the old mark of 637 miles per hour, and you'll see it on our SOS program coming up next Saturday on CBS. Danmeyer kicks off another short boot. Bashnagel brings it back.
They're complaining about a little leg twist there. Let me make one correction before we go any farther. I said Neil Armstrong played for the Chicago Cardinals. If he if any of his friends listen to this telecast, he'd kill me. He played for the Philadelphia Eagles against the Chicago Cardinals.
And there he is in the midst of a group of his Chicago Bears who have 1st and 10 from their own 31. 12:40 to play in the second quarter, and Chicago trails 7-0. The touchdown by Kramer a moment ago, the first one yielded by the Bear defense this year. Last week, all they gave up was a Chester Marco field goal against Green Bay. Walter Payton turns the corner. Good game for Walter. He has had 26 100-yard games in his career, 4 of them against Minnesota.
There's the Minnesota scoring drive, 14 plays, 90 yards, possession, 6 minutes, 49 seconds. You were talking about Walter Payton. Do you know that in his last 180 carries, he's only fumbled once? Usually that type of a runner, the scat back, you're going to get fumbles. Very seldom does he ever fumble.
Johnny, you and I did the game last year against Tampa Bay when Walter went past the 5,000-yard mark in his career. The only man ever to do it sooner in his career was the great Jimmy Brown. Payton again. Small hole, turns it into a big game. Give him any kind of daylight and he's gone. He is in Minnesota territory. Scott Studwell finally stopped him.
He has that great acceleration. Once he gets the ball and tucks it away, he'll carry it loosely and then tuck it away when he decides to make his move. Here comes the pitch out. That time he carries it to the inside. You're going to see Studwell come from the inside here to make the tackle. But Walter hangs onto that ball and goes down.
Unofficially, Payton with 28 yards on 6 carries so far. He got 8 on that play, setting up 2nd down and 2. Bashnagel in motion left to right. Mike Phipps on the handoff to Dave Williams. Williams might have been stopped for a gain of only 1, but he forced his way forward for a Chicago 1st down.
Yes, he kept his legs driving there and got the 1st down.
Williams was originally drafted by the Cowboys, decided instead to play in Canada, then came back to the NFL with San Francisco, where he backed up both Delvin Williams and O.J. Simpson at various times. Now he plays alongside Walter Payton in an emergency situation for the Bears with Harper, Skavinsky, and Earl all on the sidelines with injuries. 1st and 10 from the 45. This time it's Richards in motion. Phipps hands it to Payton. Walter skips his way through the hole and gets about 5.
The Vikings have been using a 4-man front here the last few plays, 4 defensive linemen with the 3 linebackers rather than the 3-4. And the Bears are managing to get some yards from it. Did you notice the time that Walter had before they really came down on him? The Bear offensive line in the middle is pushing that defensive line back and giving Walter time to pick his way.
The Vikings lead it 7-0. We're inside 10 minutes to play in the 1st half. Bashnagel on the move. Williams on the carry. 3, maybe 4. It'll be a 3rd down play.
This is the same situation as Chicago had last week against the Packers. They controlled the ball, had the ball 40 minutes to only 20 minutes for the Packers, did not score a touchdown, but ran the ball up and down the field and ate up the clock. They're doing the same thing to the Vikings. However, the Vikings haven't had the ball that much, but they got the touchdown on the board.
Monty Clark with problems at quarterback, starting rookie Jeff Comlow out of Delaware today against the Redskins, and Washington leads at 10-3. Pittsburgh over Houston 7-0 in the 1st. Bears need a yard to keep the drive alive.
Oh.
Phipps may keep it himself. 1st down yardage, then he's cut down by John Turner, who came up quickly from his left cornerback spot, but Phipps did get the 1st down. A
great block by number 22 Williams to get Phipps around the horn as they went to the outside, both teams having more success to the outside.
Honey Bears having success entertaining the crowd at Soldier Field.
And they're certainly glad it's 65 degrees. I don't even know if it's 65. What would you guess?
They told us about 62 at game time. Anyway, has to be better for the players than it was a week ago. Almost 100 degrees on the field as the Bears won 6-3 last Sunday against Green Bay here. Phipps with a short drop and quick throw to the sideline. Got his man James Scott. Scott spinning away from tacklers and dragged out of bounds. Scott, who led the Bears with 42 receptions a year ago, is tackled by Paul Krause.
You're going to see number 25 as the cover man, Nate Allen. Just a quick 3-step drop back for Phipps. Scott down the field and just cuts out on the short out pattern. He had a lot of distance between Allen here. That's the time you get a chance to run, but he got some help from the inside and finally knocked out of bounds. But a lot of room they gave James Scott. He's a deep threat, no question about it.
Nate Allen playing in place of Bobby Bryant, who's had a problem with a kidney stone and is not in uniform today. First and 10 from the 22. Walter Payton trying to cut outside, and Paul Krause came up from his free safety spot and was able to grab part of Walter's shirt, and that might have prevented a much longer gain.
Let's watch his quickness and watch the time that he has to survey the line there and make his steps. Now, number 22 hadn't been over to the right there to force Walter, to go to the wide, to get outside of him. They could have had a long game, but Paul Krause stood his ground there and got in on the tackle. But otherwise, it would have been a touchdown.
2nd and 8 from the 20. The stats on Phipps so far. 7.5 minutes to play in the first half. Vikings lead at 7-0. That's Greg Lotta, the tight end, in motion. Phipps has time to throw, but it's batted down by Mark Mullaney.
Good play by Mark Mullaney because Payton was wide open. He just waited. Did you notice they had a double wing back that time? It's another new formation for the Bears. And Payton will get caught in the traffic on purpose and then slip out. And he goes out into the right flat, and he was open. There is Mullaney, number 77, did what a good defensive end can do and should do when he's not going to get there. He sees the quarterback ready to throw, stop, and just leap up as high as you can. And he did a good job.
Passing situation for the 10-year veteran from Purdue, Mike Phipps.
They're going to double James Scott.
And they go to Payton on the draw, and they do not get the first down. What they do get is a chorus of boos.
Well, the fans have seen the Bears drive quite a bit in the past couple of games and still have no touchdowns to show for it. So Bob Thomas will come on to kick a field goal. He's got the wind with him this time, and this distance is just about right for him. Bob Thomas kicks at 73% from the 30 to 39-yard line.
He was short from 47 yards in the first quarter. This one considerably shorter, and he puts it through. A 39-yard connection by Bob Thomas, and that cuts the Minnesota lead down to 7-3 with 6:47 to play in quarter number 2. Bob Thomas to kick off. I believe I said a moment ago that his field goal was a 39-yarder. It was a 34-yard boot by Thomas, which gave the Bears their first points of the afternoon. Jimmy Edwards returns Thomas's kick, finds some daylight, and is out around the 34. If he had beaten one more man, he might have gone the distance.
Yes, he's done very well on the kickoff returns. Went for gains, made the tackle. But I get the biggest kick out of looking at Edwards. He's got those shoes. He looks like he's wearing high tops, almost up to his ankles. He looks like he's playing in 1922, but he can run, I'll tell you that. Comes up, the wedge does a good job of clearing right here. As you see, that number 83 blocks 74. Number 83, of course, is Stu Voigt. And finally, it's Gaines who makes the saving tackle, number 36 for Chicago.
Credit Edwards with a 35-yard run back. It was his run back late in the game against San Francisco a week ago, which helped set up the winning touchdown. Pitch back to Foreman, going nowhere, dragged down by Osborne and Muckenstern.
I hope we can see that one again because the Bears have made a move to try and stop that outside pitch. Watch Muckenstern, the outside linebacker, come shooting way across to allow pursuit from the inside. You're going to see 68 there. Osborne makes the tackle, but it was Muckenstern who went to the outside right there and forced him back in. Here it is from ground level as Foreman tries the outside. Muckenstern had come up to force him, and then, of course, Jim Osborne was in there to help out.
They lost one at 2nd and 11. We're inside 6 minutes to play in the first half. Ball at the 33. Kramer dropping back and off the hands of Foreman.
Well, that was catchable. He slipped just a little bit as the ball got there and had his hands up there rather than trying to catch it in the old red basket, but nobody should be able to tell Chuck Foreman how to catch passes. He's caught an awful lot for Minnesota over the years.
A year ago, John, Ahmad Rashad caught 66 passes for 8 touchdowns for Minnesota. He opened the season last week against San Francisco with 7 receptions for 152 yards and 4 touchdowns. So far today, he's caught only 1 from Tommy Kramer. So the Bears secondary has done a good job on him. 3rd down and 11. All kinds of pressure. He eludes Hartenstein. He eludes Muckensturm, then Hartenstein grabs him from behind. Kramer is sacked. The Vikings will punt.
Great tenacious play by Mike Hartenstein to throttle Kramer, who made a good play in the pocket because Hartenstein came across, forced him to adjust, then he had to dodge Jim Osborne, then he had to run, and meanwhile Hartenstein got back in the play and made the tackle. The Vikings are forced to punt.
Waiting back deep is Steve Schubert, standing at his 30-yard line for Chicago. This is Greg Coleman, the Viking punter. He gets it away in good shape, a very high kick. Schubert to the far sideline at about the 28, across the 35, and down at about the 37-yard line. The Soldier Field clock shows 5 minutes and 15 seconds to play in the second quarter, and Minnesota leads the Bears 7-3. It was a delightful story on Puff the Magic Dragon. MASH and WKRP in Cincinnati follow, and then it's the highly acclaimed Lou Grant all tomorrow night on CBS.
And you're looking at Mike Phipps on the sidelines because Vince Evans has come in at quarterback for the Bears.
And his entrance was greeted by all kinds of cheering from the Chicago fans. He is their #1 choice. He pitches back to Walter Payton on his first play from scrimmage. Walter finds some daylight. A flag is thrown as he gets out across midfield. They actually pushed him out just shy of the 50-yard line, and there is a penalty marker down.
We don't know whether Mike Phipps is just still feeling under the weather because he has been sick for a couple of days, or whether they inserted Vince Evans to just because there's 5 minutes left in the half and to see if they can get some spark going. He's the kind of a quarterback that can hurt you so many ways that he's liable to run for 40 yards.
But there's no doubt, John, he's the people's choice here.
Yes, from the reaction of the crowd, he had a good training camp, a good exhibition season.
Offensive left end, number 87, holding. 1st down.
Mike Cobb, the tight end of the Bears, got caught for holding, and that sure hurts Chicago. That makes a difference of about 40 yards when you figure the plus and the minus of the situation. As you look at the Giants leading St. Louis by a score of 14-7 in the second quarter. Pittsburgh over Houston 10-0 in the second quarter.
5:09 to play. 1st and 20 from the 26. Bears trail it 7-3. Bashnagle in motion out of the slot. Evans gives it to Payton, and they're waiting for Walter. Doug Sutherland hit him first.
Oh, a great play by Doug Sutherland. He was being blocked by Noah Jackson, spun right out of the block and right into Payton. He almost guessed where he was, and there he was. Let's watch right there at the bottom of your screen. There you're going to see Reeve, 69, not Jackson, and there comes, he was on Jackson, 65, and there was Sutherland, 69, playing off the block and making the tackle. Good play.
This front four of Minnesota, a veteran group, even with the departure of Carl Eller. Mullaney, Sutherland, James White, they've all been around a while. And, of course, Jim Marshall, 41 years old and a 20-year veteran out of Ohio State. So there's some experience there. Evans will put it in the air for the first time. And it is over the head of James Scott and incomplete. He had good protection but couldn't make the connection.
James Scott and Nate Allen are having a few words on the sidelines. James saying, "You are holding me," or "You hit me too soon." That's what he's saying, but they settled it. Here is a ground level view of it. As there comes Nate Allen, there's Scott. They're right there. I don't see any contact yet, and he goes up for the ball. I think he's making a legitimate try for the ball. So it was just a good play by Nate Allen.
And Buffalo takes the lead over the Bengals, 10-7. Both those clubs 0-1 coming into today's action. 3rd and 21 for Evans from his own 25.
No blitz.
And the pass knocked down. Randy Holloway got in there that time. That is the 3rd deflected pass by the Minnesota front four. Mullaney has knocked a couple down, and now Holloway, and the Bears have to punt.
They have some height there on that pass rush, and it paid off. That time it was strictly 4 men. They got in past 5 men, so the pass blocking broke down as the Vikings are having a surprising strength on the pass rush.
And the Cardinals bounce back with a couple of touchdowns after trailing 14-0. They're now tied with the Giants. Bob Parsons' last punt covered 41 yards. Gets this one away in pretty good shape. Jimmy Edwards lets it bounce.
Woo!
And then it's picked up by another Viking. Dangerous play. Nate Allen came up and tried to make a return out of it. Got nothing. What he might have gotten was a fumble. That was a very dangerous play. 4:07 to play second quarter. It remains Minnesota 7 and Chicago 3. On CBS, Ken Squire will anchor our coverage as we watch them try and break the speed of sound. SOS on CBS. Tommy Kramer, 2 of 5 so far for just 30 yards, and one of his passes has been intercepted. Terry Schmidt picked that off. Vikings lead at 7-3. From their 37 on first down, Ricky Young carries out to around the 40. Hampton and Page combine on the tackle.
Well, there's 3 minutes and 53 seconds left in the half, and this is the point where you expect Minnesota to go to the air as Tucker comes in with a play. And let's see what Bud Grant has come up with.
The Vikings have 20 years of NFL experience at the tight end spot. As you see Washington increasing their lead over Detroit. Bob Tucker, a 10-year veteran, and so is Stu Boyd. 3:25 to play in the first half. Kramer with the fake handoff and time to throw over the middle, and nobody anywhere near it, but there is a flag down. Holding on Minnesota, John.
Well, that hurts. Obviously, the Bears will take the penalty and put the Vikings into a long passing situation. That's where the Bears have excelled so far this year, coming up with the big plays on the prevent defenses. Buddy Ryan, the defensive coordinator, believes in all kinds of different fronts and defenses to confuse an offense, especially with a young quarterback.
Offense, number 78, holding. Second down.
Steve Riley holding on the play. It cost them 10, 2nd and 17 from the 30.
As the Bears make some defensive changes and bring in Bruce Herron and Lee Kuntz, this is their pass prevent defense. Sometimes Fran Tarkenton would just chew these kinds of defenses up. Let's see what Tommy Kramer does this time.
This is a big, big game for the Bears. If they win it, they could go 2-0, and they almost need to, because in the next 2 weeks they play the Cowboys in Dallas and then the Dolphins in Miami. Foreman carries. And this will bring up third down and still long yardage.
The Bears put the blitz on that time. They brought everybody, and the Vikings kind of had a hunch there. So they just did a little quick hit right up the middle and got some yardage, but not enough for the first down. But it puts them in a legitimate, normal passing situation, you might say. It's a lot different to have a 3rd and 10 situation than it would be to have 3rd and 15, 3rd and 20. It changes the game completely.
Speaking of upcoming games, tough one for Minnesota next week at home as well. They've got to entertain Don Shula's Dolphins. 3rd and 10, 2:42 on the clock. Kramer has time. Now that protection breaks down, and Tommy Kramer is sacked. Had to be a good job by the Bears secondary, because Kramer did have enough time initially. Then eventually Jim Osborne closed in on him, and he gets credit for the sack.
Well, Jim Osborne, you see Page to the right, Osborne to the left, and that is Wes Hamilton blocking on him, and he just beat Wes Hamilton. There was some help there, but not enough. And Jim Osborne just made a real good effort. He out-muscled number 61, Wes Hamilton.
Last week, James Lofton, the great Packer receiver, as you look at deep man Steve Schubert for the Bears, caught only one pass against Chicago. And thus far, the Bears secondary has done a good job of bottling up the likes of Ahmad Rashad for Minnesota. Greg Coleman getting set to punt. Bears are going to have a couple of minutes to work with once they get the ball. Schubert across the 35, across the 40, and out of bounds. Good field position for Chicago, and 1:59 left in the half.
Boy, somebody almost took Len Walderscheid's head right off on that. But he's still walking normal, and his head looks normal, so I guess he's okay.
Right after the game, we go to New York. Everett Lloyd against the teenage wonder Tracy Austin. And Gerolaitis against McEnroe, a Subway final among the men. Couple of New Yorkers there. 2-minute warning time at Soldier Field. Beautiful day, temperature in the 60s, sun is shining, and the Vikings have a 7-3 lead on the Bears. Johnny, how's the Bears' 2-minute game?
over the past few years has not been very good. We'll see what happens today.
Vincent Tobias Evans is in at quarterback. 6'2", 208 in his third year from USC. He was the Rose Bowl MVP back in 1977 with the Trojans. He backed up Pat Aiden for a while. He replaced Phipps midway through the second quarter for the Bears. He pitches back to Walter Payton. Walter turns the corner, has about 5, and stops the clock by getting out of bounds.
Let's watch Walter Payton carrying the ball here as he takes the pitch out, goes to the outside. Good block by Dave Williams, number 22, as he takes McNeil out of the play. See Walter, see how he carries that ball? But right before he makes contact, watch the power and the strength of his shoulder as he really lays it to Nate Allen, right there. Walter likes to punish a defensive player. You can't quite see it, but he says that's the way he can bounce off people. He actually tries to make a tackle on the defensive player by putting the force of his shoulder, which he says helps him bounce and react. And the Bears call a timeout because of a little confusion.
This leaves them with 2 timeouts left. I think they were about to use up too much time, and rather than risk the 5-yard penalty for delay of game, they wisely called a timeout, and Evans confers with Neil Armstrong.
Didn't Payton go out of bounds on the last play?
But you still have only 30 seconds to get the play off once they mark the ball. Sports Spectacular next Saturday. A fight you'll want to see. Howard Davis risking his 11-0 record against the 6th-ranked lightweight. And believe me, folks, this guy's name really is Maurice Termite Watkins. Gotta like the Termite. Howard Davis is pretty slick, but Termite Watkins may give him a tough time. The Italian Grand Prix and the U.S. Amateur Roller Skating Championships will be seen next Saturday as well. 4:30 Eastern, 3:30 Central Time on the CBS Sports Spectacular. The Honey Bears do their thing, and Vince Evans is done talking it over with Neil Armstrong. The Bears have 1:54 left to work with.
The Vikings haven't done too much fancy stuff as far as their linebackers are concerned. They've blitzed a couple of 3 times, but now is the unique situation with 1:54 left. Let's see if they try anything fancy and try and confuse the young quarterback of the Chicago Bears, who has never started a regular season game and has not thrown very many passes in the NFL. He can run, he can throw, he's got a great arm, he has all the ability, and a lot of Bear fans would like to see what he can do, and they're seeing right now.
A year ago, the Bears suffered through an 8-game losing streak, then closed the season winning 4 of 5. They took 3 of 4 in the preseason this year, and then won their regular season opener. So they've rebounded considerably from the doldrums they found themselves in last season. Evans airs one out deep. He wants Scott. He's got him. Touchdown. Vince Evans to James Scott.
But Evans is hurt, but it was a touchdown. He gets up and comes off the field. He really threw that ball downfield, and Scott turned on that second gear, outran Nate Allen, was probably interfered with, but still made the touchdown. James Scott, number 89. Let's take a look as Vince Evans with the fake of Walter, which holds him for just a second. Here comes the pressure, not too much, and he just threw it as far as he could. You're going to see Allen fall right here, and he kind of hits onto Scott's feet, but the pass was perfect right in the breadbasket. Touchdown, Chicago Bears.
Boy, he couldn't have taken that in better stride. Bob Thomas trying to add the conversion out of Bashnagel's hold. And there's Vince Evans limping a little bit, but you got to know that he's happy.
I don't know if it was a knee or the back of his leg, maybe a muscle cramp or a pull, but he seems to be trying to shake it off. And everybody's talking to him because they want to see more of that. That was a fantastic throw. He threw that from, he must have thrown that about 50 to 60 yards in the air. I would say at least 60. Didn't Scott catch it on about the 3, right around the goal line?
And just stepped in for the score, which puts the Bears in front. Thomas's extra point, of course, was good. They lead at 10-7. It was Dave Roller, the former Packer, who put the pressure on Evans and hit him just as he released. Next Sunday on CBS, regional games. The Lions and the Jets in New York. The Eagles at the Superdome to take on New Orleans. Tampa Bay at Green Bay in a Central Division tussle, and out west, it's the 49ers and the Rams at the Coliseum. And And these same Chicago Bears will be in Dallas to take on the Cowboys. Word from the sidelines, Evans has a bruised thigh.
Which amounts to a old-fashioned Charlie horse. He got banged on the front of the thigh pads. I hope he was wearing thigh pads, but at any rate, we'll see if he's able to play in the next series of downs as the kick goes deep into the end zone.
Jimmy Edwards thinks about it, then decides to bring it out. Plenty of hesitation, and he gets out to about the 15-yard line. Edwards changed his mind about 3 different times on that one.
You got to make up your mind and go one way or the other and stick with it.
Evans now trying to run off the effects of that bruised thigh, and apparently he's okay. Jimmy Edwards not feeling too well after being racked up on that kickoff return, but he goes off under his own power. Bob Thomas really got his foot into that kick.
Yes, he did. He had the benefit of a little added wind, but he really boomed it, and that's something the Vikings aren't getting with their kickoffs.
So now the Bears have the lead for the first time at 10-7. Tommy Kramer gave the Vikings a 7-0 edge early in the second quarter on a rollout TD run. Then a Bob Thomas field goal of 34 yards cut it down to 7-3. And then the long bomb from Evans to Scott put the Bears in front 10-7. Kramer hands the ball to Ricky Young. Young isn't going any place at all. The Bears hold a team meeting on his body, and Young is dropped.
Let's see if we can see where Evans got the actual hit. We'll look at the bottom of the screen. There is the fake to Payton. And you're going to see Roller come right here.
The clock is moving with 1:08 left. As we look again at Evans' touchdown delivery. That play covered 56 yards from Evans to Scott for the go-ahead TD. Chuck Foreman carries. Flag goes down. Clock moves inside a minute. And Foreman is stopped at the 20.
I think it's going to be a penalty on Goodrum.
Charlie Goodrum might have been holding along that offensive line for Minnesota. There's the scoring drive for Chicago. They went 60 yards in 2 plays, 56 of it gobbled up on the pass from Evans to Scott.
You can't go much faster than that. 12-second drive.
Offense, number 68, holding.
You know, I asked you before they came out on the field following that last break how good the Bears' 2-minute drive offense was. Almost too good.
Yeah, that was very good. This penalty hurts the Vikings because now if there's a mistake with the pressure that the Bears are going to put on, the Bears could get another quick field goal or a touchdown if there is a mistake. So let's see how the Vikings play it.
On 2nd and 17 from their own 8. They stay with the ground game. Now let's see if the Bears call a timeout. Ricky Young was hit by Hartenstein and Hicks.
Neil Armstrong is frantically signaling, take a timeout, take a timeout.
And they do.
Do you think Neil Armstrong would like to beat Bud Grant, his old boss? There he is right there. Coming back with instructions for Tom Hicks to do what to do after this next play.
For 8 seasons, Armstrong was Grant's defensive coordinator in Minnesota. Coming up after the game, don't forget, one of the great U.S. tennis opens in recent history will conclude with Chris Everett Lloyd taking on Tracy Austin in the women's finals and Vitas Gerulaitis going against young John McEnroe in the men's finals. That's right after the game here on CBS.
Well, there's strategy going on the other side of the field with Bud Grant talking to Tommy Kramer. It's a very difficult situation when you're on your own 8-yard line and you have about, 15 yards to go for a first down or even more. This is when they used to come up with the old quick kick on 3rd down. But in this modern day of football, they feel that when you have an offensive play, you use it because you never know what you can do with it. But back in the old days, that quick kick sometimes could be a valuable weapon.
In Kramer's brief NFL history, he's gained the reputation as a second-half quarterback. 2 years ago, he pulled out victories when Fran Tarkenton was hurt in the second half against both Cincinnati and San Francisco. The San Francisco win absolutely miraculous, 3 touchdown passes in the 4th quarter. And then, of course, last week, he threw for 297 yards against San Francisco, 231 of them in the second half, and all 4 touchdowns in the second half. We'll go to New York for the NFL Today at halftime, joining Brent, Jane, and Irv. 3rd and 16 with 43 seconds left.
Will
And
the
the ball at
Bears
the 9.
blitz? Will the Bears blitz? We'll see.
Minnesota is taking no chances. The Bears have a timeout left, and Doug Plank rushes over to use it. And the clock is stopped with 37 seconds remaining. I think the official is telling Plank that he was a little overzealous in trying to get to him to ask for the timeout, and he ran into the official and bumped him pretty hard, and he was saying, "Hey, Doug, hold it. Take it easy. I'll give you your timeout. Just don't knock me over."
Knowing Doug Plank, I can see that he gets excited. Well, the Bears are going to probably have a couple of plays because there'll be a change of possession, and the clock will be stopped, and they'll have a couple of shots to get down in field goal range, which could make a difference. Right now, it's 10-7 in favor of Chicago.
But because they used a timeout just prior to the touchdown pass from Evans to Scott, they are now out of timeouts, having used their last 2 on the last 2 plays by the Vikings. Schubert is the deep man, just beyond the 50. And Coleman has to kick. He'll meet it from about his own goal line. Very little rush by the Bears. Schubert wants a fair catch and makes it at his own 46. And you see the time remaining, 29 seconds. Bob Thomas is not the greatest long-range field goal kicker in the NFL, so Evans is going to have to get this ball probably inside the 30-yard line of Minnesota if the Bears are to have any kind of chance for a Thomas three-pointer.
Thomas is much more effective from the 20 to the 30 and the 30 to the 40. Obviously, most field goal kickers are, but I'm talking comparable-wise. He's very deadly from 30 to 39.
Well, forget about Evans for these last 29 seconds. He has that bruised thigh, and Neil Armstrong will hold him out at least until the second half. And Mike Phipps is back in there. So Phipps is calling the signals for the Bears, who lead it 10-7. And they want more. Phipps has time. Sideline. Walter Payton. And the clock keeps moving. Bears have to set up quickly. They have no timeouts left. The ball at midfield. Inside 10 seconds. Intended for Scott, broken up by Matt Blair. 7 seconds to play in the half.
So the field goal possibility is probably is very remote. They may now throw one of those prayer passes that a lot of the teams have come up with in the past few years, where they send receivers into the same area and throw it up for grabs, hope that somebody can get a deflected pass or maybe get the easy touchdown off of a lucky break.
Either that or a deep sideline route, which they can run.
See, they have all the receivers out. They're going to throw it away. Look at the Vikings. They're back 38 yards.
The Vikings are in the prevent of all prevents.
Yes.
And Phipps just heaves it into a crowd of white shirts. The ball batted around down there. Double zeros on the clock.
And you know who almost intercepted that? Paul Krause was right there.
I think Nate Allen, however, came up with the ball. Nate Allen will get credit for an interception. He picked it off as time ran out.
There's a penalty flag down.
12 men on the field.
Well, the Bears tried to gain an unfair advantage. They
That's
inserted
cheating.
an extra man. The Vikings say, we'll forget about that. That's the end of the first half. We're going to take a look at that last play as up for grabs in just a minute.
I thought they looked like they had a lot of receivers there, but I figured nobody would miscount. But let's look at the ball come down. There's Krause, the one that leaped the highest, and the ball just kind of bounces around, and they were hoping for the break. Supposing it had fallen left, there you can see on the left there was Golden Richards, could have caught the ball and walked in for a touchdown. It did not, but that was the only shot they had at it with 7 seconds to go.
Scott was the Bear in the black shirt leaping up for it. Nate Allen came out of the pile with the interception. And the Bears go into the locker room with a lead over the Vikings, and I guess you could label this a rather typical Central Division battle.
Serious type of a situation as the kickoff takes off.
Bob Thomas boots it, and it's Ted Brown who takes it across the 20. Fumble as he's hit. Loose football. And let's see who comes up with it. Still free. Squirts free into the end zone. And we might have a safety coming up. We do. Tim Baylor came up with it for Minnesota after it crossed the end line. And it's a safety, and the Vikings will have to kick the ball back to the Bears. Ted Brown, the #1 Viking draft choice, the great running back out of North Carolina State, was belted as he brought it back, and he is flat on his back and being worked on now by the Viking trainer. There's a look at Ted Brown. The ball squirted free, and just about everybody had a crack at it, and actually it might have been a break for Minnesota that it wound up going all the way through the end zone, because otherwise the Bears might have had 1st and 10 at the Minnesota 5.
There's the hit, and the ball just squirted out, and then it was a foot race with 2 Chicago Bears after it and only 1 Minnesota Viking. Bruce Herron appeared to have the best shot at it. Lee Coons, number 57. But number 67, Dennis Sweeley, helped out there a little bit as he got the ball to go forward more, and backwards, I should say, and finally it goes out of the end zone, which makes it an automatic safety. The Vikings will have to punt to the Bears. The score is now 12-7 Chicago, and the Bears the chance to get good field position as Brown goes off the field. It is a bad play for Mr. Brown in every way.
So a free kick for the Vikings, and Greg Coleman will punt from the 20-yard line. Except for that one scoring drive by the Vikings, which Kramer ended with his rollout touchdown, the Bears have pretty much controlled the ball game, John.
They certainly have. The Vikings had only 86 yards in the first half. And now they're going to be punting against the wind, so the Chicago Bears will probably have very good field position once they get possession.
This is as beautiful a day as I can remember for a football game in Soldier Field in many, many years.
Very nice down there. A player always appreciates having a brisk, cool wind because it can get mighty hot, especially on an artificial surface. This is a brand new surface down here on Soldier Field.
Just about the only thing that's brand new here. The place built in 1924, the oldest facility in use in the NFL. Schubert takes the kick, finds a hole, good return, and things continue to break Chicago's way.
Steve Schubert, who missed the entire exhibition season with a bad foot, gets a key punt return to put the Bears in great field position as he takes it and does the best thing normally is just go right up the middle, follow your blockers, and thread your way, and he does. And finally, he's tackled and brought down by Nate Allen, number 25.
A 27-yard return for Steve Schubert. Baltimore, minus Burt Jones, leading Tampa Bay 17-0.
Vince Evans at quarterback.
So Evans playing hurt with Golden Richards in motion. Pitch back to Walter Payton. Change of direction. Daylight for Walter. Look out. Here he goes. 15. Across the 10. Across the 5. Touchdown, Walter Payton.
What a runner. What a runner, Walter Payton. It appeared they had him stopped very briefly behind the line of scrimmage, but he just picked his way and took off, and then used James Scott to his best advantage. Man in motion, Golden Richards back across the field. Now see, there's no penetration there as Walter just takes off here, and James Scott is running in front of Nate Allen. It's 89 and 25. Here's where Walter shifts the ball, waits for Scott to throw his block, and then cuts back into the end zone. He does it all.
The first 35 seconds of the second half have been a nightmare for Bud Grant. A fumbled kickoff, a safety, a return on the subsequent kick of 27 yards, and then on the first play from scrimmage, a 43-yard touchdown run by Walter Payton. Add the kick by Bob Thomas, and the Chicago Bears have a 19-7 lead over the Minnesota Vikings. Let's watch Payton again as he scoots 43 yards for 6 points. He's now carried 12 times for 84 yards. Get the Sports Spectacular this coming Saturday on CBS, and what we've seen in the opening minute of this third quarter has been pretty spectacular too. Thomas gets all of this kick, and Ted Brown decides to try and bring it back out. It was a disaster the last time. This time Brown holds on to the ball and gets across the 25.
Notice the way Walter carries the ball when he breaks into the open field. He'll put 2 hands on the ball out in front of him, Well, that's at the end of the touchdown. Look for Vince Evans, number 8. He gets down the field in a hurry. He's the man who handed off the ball. He's going to come say, "Congratulations, Walter. Here comes Vince. I'm going to carry you back to the sidelines."
There's the drive. One play, 43 yards, 11 seconds elapsed. And the Bears go in front 19-7. Now Tommy Kramer has some catching up to do. Chuck Foreman gets him a couple of yards, but no more than that.
The Vikings continue to try and run the ball, and they have not been that successful in the first half. Sooner or later, they're going to have to open up and see what they can do. They have not thrown to Ahmad Rashad. Obviously, the Bear defense is geared to stop Rashad, but he also had that slightly tender, looked like a knee there, and maybe he's just not 100%, and that's one of the reasons they're not throwing to him.
Cunningham is wide right. Rashad is wide to the left. Kramer looks for Rashad. Rashad makes a little turn-in move and turns what should have been a short gain into a big one. Out across the 45.
He's something else, isn't he? He did that last week and made a touchdown out of it and came fairly close this time as the Bears faked the blitz, just threw the short out over to the sidelines. Up comes Virgil Livers, missed the tackle, and Rashad headed down the sidelines. Pretty good pursuit by the Bears as Lenny Walterscheid, number 23, makes the tackle, but not before a first down for the Minnesota Vikings.
Rashad with those 4 touchdown casters last week against San Francisco. The last time an NFL player caught 4 touchdown passes in a game was in December of 1973 when Paul Warfield did it for the Miami Dolphins. Ted Brown carries, good blocking, and shoved out of bounds as he gets into Bear territory across the 45. Virgil Livers knocked him out.
Ted Brown is one of 13 number 1 draft choices that play for this Viking team. Can you imagine that? That's a lot.
Shows that Mike Lynn and company have used those selections well.
Mark Mullaney, Jeff Seaman, Fred McNeil, Tommy Kramer, Chuck Foreman, Ron Yeri, Steve Riley, Ahmad Rashad. All these guys were number 1 draft choices. John Reeves was a number 1 draft choice.
They're going to measure for the first down here, apparently. And it is a Viking first down at the Bear 44. Or thereabouts, between the 44 and 45. That's middle linebacker Tom Hicks in his 4th year out of Illinois. Fans here in Chicago remember another Illinois product who played middle linebacker pretty well for the Bears. Kramer fires. He's got his man. It's Doug Cunningham. And Cunningham, the free agent rookie out of Rice, is inside the 30-yard line of the Bears. Cunningham and Kramer were teammates when Cunningham was a sophomore at Rice and Kramer was an All-American quarterback there. And now they find themselves as a pass-catching combination with the Vikings.
He's playing for the injured Sammy White, and Terry Schmidt gave him a lot of room that time. They'll probably come back to that play sooner or later.
They picked up 15 yards and another first down. 12 minutes and 12 seconds to play in the 3rd quarter. This play goes nowhere as Dan Hampton, the Bears' number 1 draft choice, is waiting for Ted Brown.
And you're going to see Jerry Muckenstern, I hope, number 58. He comes across. They've decided to cut the Vikings off on the end runs. And number 58, Jerry Muckenstern, was in on the tackle along with Hampton. But the linebacker shooting right across the line of scrimmage, not going to let the Vikings get outside. That seems to be the motto since the Vikings got some good yardage in the first half on the end runs.
A pair of number 1 draft choices bumping heads there. Brown for the Vikings, Hampton for the Bears. They lost 1. 2nd and 11 from the 30 as Kramer drops back. Sideline, juggled, and dropped by Ahmad Rashad. Rashad says that playing wide receiver is the work of an artist, and he calls himself the Baryshnikov of the NFL.
Well, I'll buy that. Although, have you seen Baryshnikov perform? Nobody performs like him.
But can Baryshnikov catch in a crowd?
Yeah.
New Orleans leads Green Bay 12-7. And they're in the 3rd. This is 3rd down and 11 for Kramer.
Oh, here they come. No, they drop off.
Kramer in trouble nonetheless. And down he goes. Alan Page got there. And he's got to relish that play against his old Viking teammates. They mob him on the sideline.
He does okay for 220 pounds, doesn't he? The Vikings thought he was too light. You look at him at the right of your screen as he gets around to the outside. Two men double up on one, and Page is all by himself, and Kramer can't get out of it. And there is one difference between Kramer and Fran Tarkenton. Tarkenton might have been able to get out of that. Tarkenton couldn't throw the ball downfield as well as Kramer.
And Steve Schubert, who had a great return the last time he handled the ball, awaits the kick from Greg Coleman. Very short kick. Schubert lets it bounce, and this will work out well for Minnesota. They're downing this at about the 2-yard line. Great kick by Greg Coleman, as it turns out. The Bears do not have good field position, but they do have the lead with 10:51 to play in the third quarter. The Bears 19 and the Vikings 7. Chris Everett Lloyd against Tracy Austin for the women's title. Vita Skarolaitis and John McEnroe for the men's crown. Immediately following the game on CBS. Doesn't seem like long ago that it was Chrissy who was the teenage marvel. Now it's Tracy Austin who wears that mantle, and she will challenge Chris Everett Lloyd for the women's championship at the U.S. Open Tennis Championships in New York immediately following this game here on CBS. Dave Williams carries as the Bears try to wedge their way out of some tough situations here, and they have brought in a couple of tight ends, both Cobb and Lotta in the lineup, Johnny, as they try and grind out some yardage with their backs to the wall.
And you have to give Dave Williams, number 22, some credit. He's had to get into a new position this week, and he didn't expect to play when he was picked up after being dropped by the 49ers, and he's playing all he wants.
He got 5 out to the 7. Second down and 5. We come up to 10 minutes to play in the third quarter. Might have taken too much time. Evans got the handoff to Williams, but a bit too late. Delay of game will be called against the Bears, and it'll back them up to the 2-yard line again.
That does make the cheese binding. They're going to be right back in the hole again. As Brian Bashnagel comes in with a new play. Apparently they're going to bring out Ricky Watts, number 80, the rookie, and bring in Bashnagel.
Delay. Second down.
Every one of these games head-to-head with Central Division foes, so important for both the Vikings and the Bears because that race is so wide open. Tampa Bay has to figure. Detroit looked like they might be in good shape until both Danielson and Reed were hurt. The Packers have title aspirations. It could go any number of ways, and each of these head-to-head confrontations is crucial. Williams tries to turn the corner, gets 3 yards. It'll be third down from the 5.
Good tackle by Nate Allen. He's made some good tackles today. That time he came up very quickly. Let's watch what happens here as Williams goes to the outside. Peyton comes up to throw his block. He misses this time. He doesn't miss too often. And here comes Nate Allen with the slicing tackle to bring Williams down. Good play by Minnesota. And a lot of time is going by here as they run in a play.
They got only 5 seconds to get it off.
12 seconds. I think the sun is on the one
that's
figure.
Right. You're right. The sun obscured my view. Now they have 7 seconds to get it off, and they do. Walter Payton on third down. Does he keep their drive alive? He does. Walter Payton got the first down.
The Vikings did what they were supposed to do here. They string it out. They try and string him out, but Walter is so quick when he makes that move up the field. And there's Reevy Sori out in front to throw the key block to kick the defensive back, and Walter just turned it up the field and got enough for the first down.
How many backs in the NFL would have turned that into a first down carry, John?
Not too many. He weighs 205 pounds and says every time he loses a pound or gains a pound, he can feel it when he's running.
It took Rick Caceres 10 years to break or set the all-time Bear rushing record, which Payton will break in a little more than 5 years. Payton carried again, this time for just a couple. He came into the game 227 yards behind Caceres' all-time total, and he will break that record in just about half the time that it took Caceres to set it.
Who knows, he could break it today. He's got over 100 yards. He has averaged over 100 yards every time he plays Minnesota. I think in 8 games he's got I know it's over 100 yards a game, so he must be pushing 900 in 8 games.
As a matter of fact, prior to today, Peyton's career average is fairly close to 100 yards a game. 5,441 career yards in 58 games. 2nd down and 9, and Dave Williams almost juggled the ball, managed to hold on, and struggled across the 20. Clock moving with 7:45 left in the 3rd. Officially, Peyton has carried 14 times for 95 yards, so this will be another 100-yard game for him.
And you don't think this is a big day for Vince Evans? If he does very well and they continue like this, he may be the Chicago Bears starter for next week. Neil Armstrong goes from week to week on who's his #1 quarterback. He says he'll play any one of them, who's ever got the hot hand.
3rd down 3, Scott wide right, Richards wide left. Back set up in the eye, and they pitch it back to Walter. Needs 3 yards. Tries to turn back to get them, struggling forward. And I think he's going to be short.
They're claiming a little bit of a fumble down there. Noah Jackson was out front, number 65. He blocked 2 men on that play. Walter could not find any running room, and there was no fumble. It'll be the Bears on another situation where they'll have to punt this time. It's 4th down.
The Packers go in front of the Saints. They're in the 3rd. It's 14-12. Bob Parsons in to kick. Whenever Parsons drops back, you've got to be aware of the possibility of a fake. He's completed 7 out of 9 passes from punt formation in his career. Vikings look like they're prepared to go with a heavy rush. Everybody coming after it. Parsons is hit. Do they throw the flag? Yes. They throw the flag down. The return is academic by Keith Nord. He's cut down quickly, but they ran into Parsons, and the Bears are going to keep the ball. You could tell that they had the big rush coming, John, but it backfired on them.
Yes, he hit him a little bit late, and then Parsons did a job of falling down extra hard from the hit. The official looked like he hesitated for a moment, but I think it's because he couldn't get his hanky out of his pocket in time. Let's hope. He's going to call it on Hannon.
Personal foul, number 45, running into the kicker. 1st down.
Judge for yourself. There was contact as Parsons is up and exposed with his leg. Here comes Hannon for the hit. Parsons says, I'm going to fall and fall hard, and you've got to call a penalty because he was hit with his legs up in the air, exposed. You're supposed to try and protect the punter. That's the rules, the reason for the rule and the officiating in that manner.
The last 2 minutes of the 2nd quarter and the first 30 seconds of the 3rd quarter have turned this game around. A 7-3 Viking lead has become a 19-7 Chicago advantage.
Here they
Evans
go.
wants it deep again for Scott, and almost. He got a hand on it, but could not hold on.
Nate Allen just can't keep up with James Scott when he gets in full stride. That was a nice pass. Allen did the best he could with it, but Scott had a step or two on him. Pretty soon they're going to start doubling him a little bit more. He's behind him, and the pass was there, but then Nate Allen came up with a good play right at the last second to save. The pass was slightly underthrown, which made the difference. Had that pass caught him in stride about a yard or two further downfield, it would have been 25-7 in favor of Chicago.
In the last 2 minutes of the 2nd quarter, Evans hit Scott for a 56-yard touchdown. First play of the 2nd half, a Ted Brown fumble resulted in a safety, 2 more points for the Bears. Shortly thereafter, Peyton went 43 yards for a score, and suddenly it was 19-7. Dave Williams on the delay gets about 5.
Look at this one. Pittsburgh 17-0 over Houston. Jeff Seaman in there playing more now. He's coming off of a hamstring. He's going out now as the Vikings will go into a semi-prevent defense.
Williams got about 4 yards on that play. 3rd down and 6 from the 33. 5:44 and the clock is moving. We're in the 3rd quarter.
Oh.
Vince Evans, look out for the blitz. They try and bring Peyton around the right side. He eludes a couple. He stays on his feet and out of bounds. 1st down, Chicago.
The Vikings put the blitz on. Watch Paul Krause on the safety blitz number 22. The play was perfect. It was a Statue of Liberty, and Krause could not quite get there in time. as Payton gets away from his grasp and got enough for the first down. A clutch play by the Chicago Bears. You saw the rest of the blitz as Matt Blair was in there too, but Payton got the first down. And actually, if I was calling the defense, I would have called that too. I would have put the blitz on him too, but the Bears had the right call against that play.
The 11th Bear first down. That should put Walter Payton beyond 100 yards, and it does. 16 carries for 105. They'll try him again. Left side. And out to midfield. Just your average 8 or 9 yard scamper. Hardly any effort at all.
Boy, he totals them up in a hurry. He watched Noah Jackson, his pulling guard, number 65, and Hannon took a lot of punishment in making this tackle. There's Dave Williams out in front, too. Watch 65 and 69, Reevy Sorry. Here's 65, Jackson. He's out in front, and Hannon is there, and there's a big collision, and Hannon had to take down about 500 pounds of beef to make that tackle.
This is the 27th time in Payton's career that he has gone over the 100-yard mark in a game, and he owns the all-time NFL record of 275 in one contest, and he did that against the Vikings. Dave Williams has the first down. He found the hole blocked up. He took it outside, and more big yardage for the Bears. Penalty markers are down.
They jammed up for Payton, and it was Williams. Saw the jam up and dipped to the outside. Did a nice job, but there's going to be a penalty against Chicago.
They were hoping for an adequate performance from Williams with Skabinski, Earl, and Harper hurt, but I would say that he's exceeded expectations.
Yes, he has. Let's listen to the call.
Offense, number 83, 37, both in motion. Illegal motion.
Willie McClendon is now in.
And both McClendon and Golden Richards were in motion, says referee Fred Silva. That cost the Bear 5, and it negates the long run by Williams. Second down and 6 from the Chicago 45. 3:53 remaining, and a good look at Vince Evans.
Oh.
Mix up at the snap, and hold on. Jeff Seaman wrapped his arms around Evans, but the whistle blew.
And Matt Blair wrapped his arms around Payton, saying, "Hi there, guy." That time they had Scott at the top of your screen, or I should say to the right, and he had a man-for-man situation on John Turner.
Ball start. Second down.
So now they push themselves back to the 40, and it's second down and 11.
At the 40.
And pretty soon on the Minnesota side, Tommy Kramer's going to have to start thinking about some more fourth quarter heroics. His team trails 19-7. As you can see, Payton has outgained the entire Minnesota team on the ground. Here comes Walter around the end again. Walter breaking into some daylight. And Walter Payton into Minnesota territory before strong safety Tommy Hannon made the tackle.
And the key to that play was number 22, Dave Williams, playing quite a game. Where do you see the block by the lead back, Dave Williams, number 22? You'll see him downfield. There it is right there. It's to the right of your screen. He's down. He knocked the linebacker, Matt Blair, down, and Payton took off, and Hannon had to make the tackle again as the Chicago Bears are on the move. Here's the ground level action as the Vikings had a little crisscross going, but it was to the wrong side of the play, so Payton had his room. Williams threw his block. McNeil chases. Payton just turns on that burst of speed. Seaman couldn't get there. Finally, it's Hannon who had to make the tackle as the Bears are on the 36-yard line, already leading by a score of 19-7.
Bud Grant with Tommy Kramer sitting on his helmet behind him. Grant watched Kramer engineer a fourth quarter comeback last week against San Francisco. Has to hope for the same here today at Soldier Field. And don't forget, immediately after this game, the finals of the U.S. Open Tennis Championships from Flushing Meadows, New York. Chrissy Everett against Tracy Austin in women's play. Vitas Gerulaitis and John McEnroe for the men's title. Vince Evans dropping back on 1st and 10. Got a man open. James Scott skips out of bounds, stops the clock with 3:04 to play in the third.
Well, they could run that play all day now because Nate Allen is playing off of James Scott, and if they get into a situation where they put the two wide receivers to that side of the field, a lot of times you're going to get a man for man. The only danger there is that when you're on the right hash mark, you got to throw all the way across the field. It makes a long way to go across the field, and it gives the defensive back more chance to react. But now they're on the left hash mark. Let's see what they do with it. You got to figure it's Peyton's turn this time.
That's what he's done so far. They got 8 yards on the last play. 2nd and 2 from the 28. Walter Payton for the first down. He just lowered his head and pulled forward for 2 or 3 extra yards.
And he never gets hurt. Never gets hurt.
He's missed only 1 game in his career. That was against the Pittsburgh Steelers a few seasons back.
He has 50 consecutive starts, and I think there's only 1 running back with more starts, and that happens to be Ricky Young, I think, for the Vikings. 54 consecutive starts.
There you see the time left. Inside 2.5 minutes remaining in the 3rd quarter. And the Bears looking to increase that 19-7 lead. They're at the 24 of Minnesota. Evans fakes, keeps it himself. He's in trouble. Can he get a pass off? They're going to say he was down right there. That's the new rule this year in the NFL, and we knew that there would be some controversies when they instituted this rule. Johnny, go ahead and explain it.
Well, they're trying to protect the quarterbacks. Remember the injury to Kramer last year when he got thrown on his head? Well, those kinds of injuries have prompted the officials to the NFL to make rule change that if the quarterback is in the grasp of somebody, they're going to blow the whistle for his own protection. And they figured that there's going to be some arguments, but that overall it's going to save quarterbacks from getting hurt, and it will equalize out for everybody's favor. Right there, they figured that Evans was stopped and could do no more, but they were wrong in this particular case. But that's the ruling.
Fred McNeil then gets credit for the sack, and it's a 12-yard loss, 2nd and 22 from the 36. Evans dropping straight back under pressure, lobs one out of there, man wide open, Dave Williams, to about the 17 where he loses the football. And Minnesota may have come up with it. It is Viking ball. Williams coughed it up after a good gain, and that's the kind of break the Vikings needed because everything was going the Bears' way.
That's right. The Bears, anything they're doing right now is working. They are really controlling the Minnesota defense. That fumble has to be a break for Minnesota. Let's see if they can take advantage of it.
It was Tommy Hannon who recovered it for the Vikes.
Was he open? Look, Ma, nobody around. He's got the ball, takes off, and then he's going to be hit by John Turner, number 27, and he'll hit the ball on the tackle there, and the ball squirts out, and Hannon was there for the recovery. Williams was hurt on the play, but he appears to be okay. He's over on the sidelines. But more importantly for Minnesota, the Vikings have the ball.
Tommy Kramer has not had very good field position to work with most of the afternoon. The Vikes have mounted 1 touchdown drive. They trail 19-7. Kramer to the air with his first down throw, and Rashad steps out of bounds after making the catch. Who is New England ever putting it on the Jets? 42-3.
Oh, boy.
Washington leads Detroit at the Silverdome 27-24, rather 10. They're in the 4th. And Tampa Bay comes back with 6 points after trailing 17-0, but they're still behind Baltimore 17-6. That game not yet to halftime. They'll measure for the first down here.
There's 1 minute and 38 seconds left in the 3rd quarter. So time is not a real big factor yet, but the Vikings obviously have to score more than a touchdown and a field goal. They got to score at least 2 touchdowns or a touchdown and 2 field goals.
And that safety right at the start of the 3rd quarter could become a very important factor as we come down to the wire. They barely got the first down, as you saw. Now they're at the 27, 1st and 10. There's Ahmad Rashad coming out of the backfield and going in motion to the right side. And Kramer finds Rashad, who breaks away from some tacklers, but then slips down at about the 42.
That time the Vikings came up with a real smart play. They put him in motion, and the way the Bears had made their defense, Doug Plank, the strong safety, was going to have to cover Ahmad Rashad, and that is a mismatch because Plank is used to covering tight ends or being a free man. Actually, they ran the out pattern, and it was a good pass, but he could have run right straight on down the field. Then he puts on his little nifty move, gets away from Tom Hicks, and gets another first down for Minnesota. They'll try something like that more often, probably.
Speaking of the tight ends, I don't think we've seen a pass thrown in the direction of the tight end for either club today. Cobb, Mata, Tucker, Voigt, none of them has figured on a pass catch so far this afternoon. Robert Miller found the going very tough against the Bear defense that time. We move inside 40 seconds to play in quarter number 3. A loss of 4 on the play, and Green Bay has increased their lead over New Orleans in the third quarter to 21-12.
Green Bay's ahead 21-12. Is that?
That's right.
Yeah, Pittsburgh's ahead, and now Pittsburgh's ahead 24-0 over Houston, and Tommy Hart is in there at defensive end for the Bears, number 53. He was in on that last play, playing now in place of Dan Hampton.
Tommy Kramer has completed 6 of 10 passes for 85 yards. 4 of the 6 he's completed have been caught by Ahmad Rashad, and this one drops incomplete. Doug Cunningham was out there, and so was Rashad. Rashad 28, Cunningham 89.
And Virgil Livers had the best cartwheel I have seen in many, many years. Here comes the blitz. Excuse me. Gary Campbell, Bruce Herron, number 51. Kramer comes forward. Now watch Virgil Livers. He's woo. Ooh. And here's Rashad, who was open, but the pass was high, and Virgil went up to get it and took a little ride.
All right, it's 3rd down and 14 from the 37 with 4 seconds to play in the third quarter. Kramer in trouble, and the third quarter ends with an Alan Page sack of Tommy Kramer.
Alan Page. Let's take a look at Page. He goes to the right of your screen. Steve Riley on the blocking there. He just muscles by. Riley, number 78, makes the sack.
That's the end of the third quarter with the score. The Bears 19 and the Vikings 7. And we now pause for a word from your local station.
Round, round, get around, I get around. Yeah, get around.
No, it couldn't be.
Do you know who that is? You're crazy.
You're Walter Pate. Man, you sure get around.
With an RTA transfer, you could really get around.
Round, round, get around, I get around. Yeah.
That suit today with the temperature only about 60 or 62. Last week it must have been suffocation time. The Bears, by the way, have recorded 4 sacks so far on Tommy Kramer, 2 of them by Alan Page. Now Greg Coleman has to punt to start the fourth quarter. Schubert, the deep man, back at the Chicago 30. Coleman standing at the Minnesota 10, meets it at the 15, under a little bit of pressure, wobbly high kick, fair catch called for and taken by Brian Baschnagel at about the 48 or 49-yard line of Chicago. So it's good field position for the Bears at the start of the fourth quarter, and they hold that 12-point lead. The Bears will go to work from their own 49-yard line with 14 minutes and 53 seconds remaining in this one, and they hold a 19-7 lead. And since Vince Evans entered the game, everything has come up roses for Chicago. Some of it, Vince had a direct hand in. Others he did not. But you couldn't convince the Chicago fans of that. He has been their favorite all through the preseason. And it's going to take a heck of a lot to get him out of the lineup next week when the Bears go to Dallas to play the Cowboys. They've got a couple of tough road games coming up. The Cowboys in Dallas, followed by the Dolphins in Miami. A real test for Neil Armstrong's club.
The test now for Neil Armstrong's club is to control the ball, maintain good field position, keep it away from the Vikings, and they couldn't lose this game. As you look at a good crowd, that is the north stands. Those are new. No, that's not the north stands. That's the west stands. 58,000 approximately here at Soldier Field.
2nd down and 8 from the 49 of Minnesota. In motion, Brian Baschnagel. Evans with the pitch back to Payton. In trouble behind the line of scrimmage. Turns what could have been a loss into a short gain.
It's virtually impossible to throw Walter Payton for a loss. He slithers his way. This time he came face to face with Noah Jackson, 65. I bet they said, which way you going here? Anyway, here's the pitch out as the Vikings penetrate and force Payton to adjust. And then number 65, his own man, comes right at him and then turns around, throws a block, but he ended up with a little gain out of it. Pretty good running by Walter Payton.
Meantime, the clock continues to move. We're inside 13:40 to play in the ballgame. U.S. Open tennis follows immediately from Flushing Meadows, New York. Golden Richards in motion. Evans on the drop and the throw. Diving grab. Was he inbounds? Yes. James Scott made the catch. They needed 6 for the first down.
The officials are having a discussion. Apparently, there was a penalty against the Bears.
Scott had first down yardage, but the penalty will negate that, apparently.
That puts them into a 3rd and 10 or 11 situation. And this will be a big play for the Vikings. 13 minutes, 24 seconds to go.
89, 83, illegal shift. 3rd down.
Golden Richards and James Scott shifting illegally, the Bear wide receivers. That's the situation with 13:24 remaining. 19-7 Bears. They have 3rd and 11 from their own 48.
Looks like the Vikings, will they blitz or will they drop off? That's going to be the key. What's their decision?
Evans looks things over and drops back to pass. He has time. He throws. It's complete. Dave Williams coming back for the catch, but that's short of first down yardage, and that means Bob Parsons will have to punt. Dave Williams has been a very pleasant surprise for Neil Armstrong this afternoon.
He certainly has. When you go through 3 fullbacks, you've got some problems, and Williams has responded. Let's see what Bob Parsons does on this punt, because he's been getting great bounces down around the 5 or 10 yard line.
That's Parsons who'll kick it to Keith Nord, who's waiting at the 10-yard line. Parsons trying to angle it for the sideline. Didn't work out that way. Nord calls a fair catch and makes it at the 15-yard line. Again, it's less than enviable field position for the Vikings, who have 12 minutes and 40 seconds to try and overcome a 19-7 deficit. Kramer has not been able to shake Rashad loose deep.
They haven't even tried it. Actually, no passes really way downfield.
And don't forget that CBS Sports Spectacular coming up next Saturday. Howard Davis against Termite Watkins as Kramer throws into the Bear secondary. Walderscheid and Schmidt were both there. It drops incomplete. Schmidt had a first-half interception off Kramer. Detroit catching up with the Redskins. They're within a touchdown in the 4th quarter.
Look at this one. Buffalo 31-17 over Cincinnati. New England now 49-3 over the Jets. Long day for New York.
Last year, Tampa Bay catching up with Baltimore 17-13 now, was 17-zip at one time. Speaking about the Jets in New England, last year the Jets went up to Foxborough and got clobbered something like 52-10. And they are heading for a similar embarrassment this afternoon. Kramer under the gun, wobbly pass, way over the head of Cunningham and out of bounds. Big pressure again by the Bear front 4.
Jim Osborne and Mike Hartenstein put on some pressure there and just rushed him. And you can't throw real accurately when you're having some big fella right in your face. Let's take a look at it. Hartenstein to the outside here. Osborne, number 68, to the inside. He's the one that gets through right there and puts the pressure on Kramer, who figured, I better get rid of it.
So it's 3rd and 10 from the 15 with 12:31 left. And Kramer tries the draw, and the Bears are not fooled. Chuck Foreman is down by Dan Hampton.
There's a penalty flag down.
The Vikings were holding, so that will do them no good. They'll have to punt.
There's no question that the Bear defense has really bottled up Minnesota. They have not been able to get any kind of coordinated attack, anything together, except that one drive that they had in the first half where they put 3 or 4 good plays together.
Through more than 7 quarters of football, first against Green Bay and now against Minnesota, the Bear defense has allowed just 1 touchdown. That by Kramer in the first half here today, as you look at the Bear deep backs. And last week against Green Bay, they allowed only a Chester Marcole field goal. So their defense has been outstanding. Coleman to punt. Meets it at about his own 5. Schubert at the 45, across the 50, across the 45. And again, the Bears set up in Viking territory with the clock showing 12 minutes and 14 seconds to play. Walter Payton, by the way, needs just 84 more yards to become the all-time Bear rushing leader, and we're coming back in a minute. What's up, Doc? Tomorrow night on CBS, well, it's Bugs Bunny and how he won the West. And then a classic song becomes a delightful show on Puff the Magic Dragon. Remember that old one by Peter, Paul, and Mary? Then it's MASH and WKRP in Cincinnati, followed by Ed Asner as Lou Grant, all on CBS tomorrow night. Bears in the driver's seat, 12:14 to play. They have the ball 1st and 10, and they lead 19-7. Walter Payton. Again, he cuts back against the grain. And he is to about the 36-yard line of Minnesota. Tommy Hannon, the strong safety, made the stop.
He is so good about of cutting back against the grain like that. That time, Jeff Seaman, number 50, just overran the play, and Walter ran to the vacated spot by Seaman.
Before that run, Payton had carried 20 times for 143 yards. He got 8, so now he's up to 151 yards. Chuck Foreman from Minnesota, 10 carries for just 18 yards. In motion, Bashnagel on 2nd and 2. Dave Williams, a Chicago first down. Matt Blair stopped him, but Dave Williams, we'll tell you again, has distinguished himself this afternoon.
He's done very well. He follows his blocking. Watch Noah Jackson, 65. He's the left guard. Now he'll stay with his block on McNeil. He hits 54. He hits him again, and that gives Williams a chance to get through the hole, and finally Hannon is in on the tackle. Good blocking by the Bear offensive line. There's Jeff Seaman, number 50, as you see him getting blocked there by Reeve Sori, and there was Jackson's block at the top. The Bears are out muscling him on the line.
We're inside 11 minutes to play. Golden Richards in motion. Evans a pitch back to Payton, who is bearing down on Rick Caceres' all-time record. Now he's bearing down on the end zone. Touchdown, Chicago.
Unbelievable, Walter Payton. And did you see that high stepping he did the last few yards? He wanted us all to see it, and we got a good look as Walter Payton around the end goes for the touchdown. Look at those stats, 49 yards yet to become the Bears' all-time leading rusher, and he's only in his 5th year of professional football.
He goes 27 yards for his 2nd touchdown of the afternoon. His first TD scamper covered 43. Here it is.
A pitch out of the I formation. Reeve Sori, Dave Williams out front. There comes the block. Watch Sori hit Sutherland, and now look how he's carrying that ball. Now lift those legs, lift them, Walter. That's it, just like the Stallions do it.
Oh, what an afternoon for sweetness. 22 carries, 178 yards, 2 touchdowns. The Bob Thomas conversion is perfect. And with 10 minutes and 45 seconds to play in the ball game, the Bears have opened up a 26-7 gap on the Vikings.
There you look at the Chicago Bear bench, and Sweetness sitting on the bench taking a rest. He deserves it.
He's gained 178 yards so far. Jimmy Edwards fields the Bob Thomas kick on a bounce, and then he is bounced around at the 11-yard line by Brian Bashnagel. The field position differences have been almost ridiculous this afternoon. The Bears have almost always had the ball in good shape, and the Vikings have almost always had their backs to the wall. Green Bay's lead down to 2 over the Saints. They're in the 4th. Well, Tommy Kramer needs another one of his miracles. He has 10 minutes and 36 seconds in which to pull it off. Sideline toss, Ricky Young breaks a tackle. Good game.
Well, if Tommy Kramer's going to do it today, it's going to take a real miracle. 10 minutes, 22 seconds to go, and the Bears are sky high on defense and offense. And I think it's maybe years of frustration that they've been beaten by these Vikings so many times in close games, and now they've got them on the run, and they're really trying to stick it to them. I think there's some real emotion involved here.
The Vikings have won 11 of the last 13 meetings between these two teams, but apparently it's going to change this afternoon. They got 6 on the last play. It's 2nd down and 4. Kramer out of the pocket. Incomplete. It'll be a third down play with the clock stopped at 9:49. Bob Avellini warms up on the Chicago sideline.
Well, he's been kind of the third man on the totem pole the last couple of weeks when they had the quarterback derby for the exhibition season, but now it looks like Evans has cemented himself in there, and you'd have to think that Evans is going to start next week, but Avellini may get the call here at the end of the game to get him some action and duty because he's been the Bear quarterback for several years. But right now, the quarterback of importance is Tommy Kramer. What can he do now? On this situation, 3rd and 4, the Vikings must get a first down to have a chance in this game.
And they are still 83 yards away from the Chicago goal line.
Blitz.
And they know Kramer has to throw on every down. He gets it out of the backfield, but short of the first down.
Oh, did you see that? A 2-time by Winford Gaines and Alan Page coming back from the pass rush.
It was Brent McClanahan who made the catch, Johnny, and he almost wishes he didn't, considering the way he was belted.
That's right. Watch him catch it. Here comes Gaines, and here's Alan Page coming from the backside. Boom, right there. And he really lays the wood to that. He was not only tackling the ball carrier, but Bud Grant on that one.
They haven't just stopped Minnesota from scoring in the second half. They have stopped them cold. The Vikings have been almost completely unable to move the ball. Coleman, who's getting plenty of punting practice, really booms this one. Schubert backpedals to almost the 25, then comes straight up the gut to the 37. About a 12-yard return by Schubert. He's stopped by Nate Allen.
And no let up. Walter Payton is coming back in the game.
Payton came into this afternoon's action needing 227 yards to surpass Rick Caceres as the all-time Bear ground gainer. He's got 178 so far, which leaves him 49 yards short. Next week, regional games on CBS, Detroit and the Jets in New York. The Eagles at the Superdome against the Saints, Tampa Bay and the Packers at Green Bay, the 49ers and the Rams at the Coliseum in L.A., and these Bears will be in Dallas to play the Cowboys.
And Bob Avellini is now the quarterback.
So all 3 Bear signal callers have seen action. Avellini hands it to Payton, and Payton churns out some more yardage. Phipps was the starter. Evans was the man who really got them going. And now it's Avellini trying to finish up. Neil Armstrong using his quarterbacks like Herman Franks across town with the Cubs might use his bullpen.
That's right, and that's what he said last week. He said, I'll use any quarterback. He said, I have confidence in all 3 of them. And he said, I'll play the hot one.
So if you wanted to put it in baseball parlance, Phipps the starter, Evans would get the win, and Avellini might get the save. 2nd down and 5. And Payton is within 44 yards of the record. Dave Williams. James Duck White puts him down. And this will be a 3rd down play with the clock showing exactly 8 minutes left.
You know, there aren't too many coaches who would say, I'll play any quarterback. You know, because they feel that the players get used to one cadence, one style of quarterbacking, one kind of throwing, and this kind of thing. But that doesn't seem to bother Coach Armstrong. He says he'll play them all, and he's proving that he means what he says. And the Vikings are in big, big trouble.
3rd down and 2. If they can keep this drive alive, it would just about finish the Vikings. Avellini rolling left. What's he doing? He's going down for a loss, that's what. His efforts obviously not appreciated by the Soldier Field faithful. Fred McNeil gets credit for the sack.
Well, his choice of going to the left when he's a right-handed thrower, he probably didn't like that call when it came into the huddle. He would much rather run to the right so he'd have a chance to throw the ball. It's so hard to run left and turn and throw when you're a right-handed thrower, but that was the call, and the Bears must punt.
But the Vikings still need 3 touchdowns in just a little more than 7 minutes. They go for the block. They don't get it. Parsons gets it off. Fair catch called for and made by Keith Nord at about the 22. And that, believe it or not, is just about the best field position the Vikings have had in this entire 4th quarter. As soon as we are done here at Soldier Field, we go to New York for the finals of the U.S. Open Tennis Championships. Chris Everett Lloyd against Tracy Austin for the ladies' crown, and the Subway Series, you might call it. Gerulaitis and McEnroe for the men's title, a pair of New Yorkers going at it at Flushing Meadow.
The Bears still playing a 4-man front now with the 3 linebackers, 4 defensive backs.
7:11 on the clock. It's unlikely that that will be a lucky combination for the Vikings. Kramer completes it, or does it? Yes, he does. They say that Cunningham held on. He did not trap it. The catch is good by Doug Cunningham, but the clock keeps moving.
Well, they're not going to come back from a 19-point deficit with 3-yard passes. It's going to be kind of tough.
The Packers had their edge. It was 21-19. Now some breathing room. 28-19 over the Saints. And the Cardinals came from behind to go in front of the Giants 27-17. And Detroit has come from behind to tie Washington at 24. They're in the fourth. Buffalo a big lead on Cincinnati, also in the last quarter. 2nd and 7. Kramer over the middle. Got his man, Ahmad Rashad. That's the longest reception that Rashad has made all day, and he really drew a crowd.
Oh, especially Doug Plank. Was that Doug Plank that came flying in there? Jerry Myers is in the game at defensive end for the Bears. He hasn't played all that much yet, but let's take a look at Ahmad Rashad. They're playing him loose. Of course, at this time of the game, they would automatically do that, and you'll see he comes across the middle, finds the hole, beats Campbell, who was just covering the short, and watch from the right of your screen after this tackle. Here comes Doug Plank. He's going to come out of nowhere to make this tackle. Here comes 46 right there. He says, let me get in on the act.
Ahmad Rashad, 4 touchdown receptions last week. The first time anybody had done that in the NFL in 6 years. Paul Warfield did it in 73 for Miami. Kramer a long one on the run, and a leaping attempt by Rashad with Mike Spivey down there on the coverage. It's 2nd down and 10. The clock shows 5:35.
There's Mike Spivey, number 47 on the coverage. He's step for step with him down the sidelines. Notice how a receiver always spots the ball first. That's the natural instinct of the receiver. The defender's trying to cover the man.
From their own 46, the Vikings have 2nd and 10. Rashad is wide to the right. Cunningham is wide to the left. And Kramer with time to throw. There's a flag down on the play. Spivey was there on the coverage against Rashad. And let's see what the call will be. Holding against Minnesota, and that'll set them back 10 more yards.
They may have called that on this Steve Riley. I'm not sure, but they have had 2 or 3 of these key holding penalties. That does not help. But when you get behind and you're frustrated and you got to pass, everybody on the field knows that you're going to pass. It makes it tough on an offensive lineman.
2nd and 20 now from the 36. 5:29 left.
Offense, number 67. Holding. 2nd down.
Swilly got the call.
Tommy Kramer has gone all the way at quarterback for Minnesota. His backups are the veteran John Reeves and the rookie Steve Dills out of Stanford. Kramer in his 3rd year from Rice. Tried to cross the Bears up, but apparently that was not too confusing to the Chicago defense.
No, it wasn't. Those Bears play games in that defensive line, and it's pretty tough to run through them there. The Vikings have to be pretty much frustrated. Nothing they do seems to be right.
3rd down and 19 after a gain of 1 on that last play, and we are now inside 5 minutes to play. Buffalo pours it on Cincinnati. Chuck Knox a happy man this afternoon. Let's see how many people the Bears send. No blitz, but Kramer is in trouble anyway. And down he goes. Jim Osborne got him. That is the 5th Chicago sack. They had 6 last week against Green Bay and 5 against Minnesota today.
Watch Osborne to the right as he gets by the center Swilly. He goes by the play but reaches out with one hand. Great play by Jim Osborne and makes the tackle. He has had a heck of a game, number 68 for Chicago.
On their 5 sacks, Page has had 2, Osborne has had 2, Hartenstein had the other one. And Greg Coleman once again finds himself in punt formation, which is where he has spent the better part of the afternoon. Kick spirals down to Schubert at the 25. He comes back 6 yards and pays for it. Takes a hard belt at the 31. The Bears have a 19-point lead in just 4 minutes and 15 seconds to protect it in. 26-7. Peyton has outgained the entire Minnesota team.
And he's not finished yet. They're not going to even let him rest.
He's 45 yards away from that all-time record, 44 or 45, away from the all-time record of Rick Caceres for yards gained rushing by a Chicago Bear. They give it to him. Let's see what he can do. He is going to churn off some yardage. A penalty flag has been thrown. It might be a clip. Let's see if they're going to bring this back. Big gain for Peyton, but I think he knows that the penalty is against Chicago. By the way he threw the ball down, I think he realizes that that run is going to be brought back.
You talk about having presence of mind. Do you suppose he actually saw the infraction? I didn't.
Let's see what Fred Silva says. Turn on the mic, Freddie.
Offense, number 87, holding. Defense, number 25, personal foul, roughing, out of bounds. Replay.
Okay, offsetting penalties against first Mike Cobb for holding and then Nate Allen of the Vikings for roughing. So they'll do the play over again.
There's Mike Cobb there. You saw him falling. He held on Mark Mullaney, and then Peyton made the move there on Hannon and took off down the field. Cost the Bears a lot of yards and Walter Payton a lot of yards before he was knocked out of bounds, and Walter slammed the ball down, so he was pretty sure what happened.
From the 32, it's 1st and 10 again. The clock is down to 4:07. Ashnagel in motion, but they have no ideas about passing now. They'll stay on the ground because time is on their side. Dave Williams carried. Very short gain. We move inside 4 minutes. Give James Duck White credit for the tackle.
The Chicago Bears have been criticized for being conservative on offense, and it's amazing how some great runs by Peyton and maybe one long pass for a touchdown can make the fans all of a sudden think the Bears are wide open. What makes an offense, here comes Walter Payton out, number 34, gained almost 200 yards. He gets to sit down. A fantastic day for Walter. The key to the Chicago Bears.
And the record undoubtedly will fall next week as Walter tries his hand against the Cowboys in Dallas. Looks like Willie McClendon on that carry, coming around the left side, and most importantly, the clock ticks away. 3 minutes and 10 seconds left. This will be a third down play for the Bears.
McClendon is pretty much of a speedster. He's a good, hard-nosed runner, and he right now is the only depth at the running back for the Chicago Bears, so at the scat back spot, so they want to take a good look and see how he does.
3rd down and 2 from the 39.
I'd say Ken Meyer, the offensive coordinator of the Chicago Bears, got to be happy. His offense has ground out a lot of yards today.
U.S. Open tennis coming up immediately following our telecast from Soldier Field. Men's and women's finals. McClendon, or was that Willie? No, it was Dave Williams. McClendon went squirting through, but without the ball. Williams had been stopped about a yard further back, and this does bring up 4th down for the Bears. They'll have to punt. The 2-minute warning is coming up. We look at a happy Neil Armstrong on the sideline. His team is about to be 2-0 and in good shape in the early portion of the Central Division race.
As you mentioned a few minutes ago, the key is going to be the next couple of weeks. The Bears will go on to play Dallas and Miami in order on the road.
We get the 2-minute warning at Soldier Field. Golden Richards conferring with Walter Payton on the sideline. Look at Walter's stats. Been devastating in the second half. I'm speaking of the Bears rather than the Honey Bears, who have been somewhat impressive throughout the afternoon.
Well, they can be devastating too.
That was my point. Parsons to punt. And a fair catch is called for by Keith Nord. He takes it at the 26-yard line, and the Vikings have a minute and 53 seconds in which to try and put an extra touchdown on the board. That's the final in Foxborough. Believe it or not, 56-3, and Walt Michaels and the Jets fly back to New York with their tails between their legs.
They'll be 0-2, and of course New England will be 1-1 after losing to Pittsburgh on Monday Night Football. So the Vikings have the ball, but there's not too much we can say good about the Vikings. It's going to be a long year, I think, for them, because they have 12 new players. They're going to go through a rebuilding process and have a new quarterback and a lot of changes, something that Bud Grant hasn't had to go through for all these years that he's been there, and now he's going to have to face that.
That play typifies their second half frustration as Chuck Foreman loses 5. Try these numbers on for size for Walter Payton. There he is, 23 carries for 182 yards, plus 14 more yards on pass receptions. Total offense, 196 yards for the day. He is 45 yards away from Rick Caceres' all-time Bear record, and doubtless he'll get it next week in Dallas. And they keep it on the ground with the rookie Ted Brown. No, that's Brent McClanahan. Brent McClanahan on the carry. 7-year veteran out of Arizona State. And we have exactly a minute remaining.
Paul Krause went through another game without getting his interception. He's going to begin to wonder if he's ever going to get it.
Chuck Foreman has carried 11 times this afternoon for 13 yards.
His average has been considerably down since that knee injury, and whether he ever comes back to get into form, how much of it is knee, how much of it is the blocking in the offensive line.
They have Brent McClanahan and Robert Miller at the running backs, and they're just running the ball to run out the clock. This is Miller. That was 3rd down and 6 yards to go. The clock is moving with 20 seconds.
I'd like to see him at least throw a pass. I mean, you're behind, you might as well. Why run the clock on? I know it's bad, but what the heck?
Apparently Bud Grant has said the heck with it. It was only 10-7 at halftime, but the Bears blew it open in the 3rd quarter. And this one is all over with the final score as Sweetness Walter Payton leads his Bear teammates off the field. Chicago 26 and Minnesota 7.
So the Chicago Bears are now 2-0 and could possibly have the lead in the Central Division depending on what Tampa Bay does with Baltimore. But it was simply all Chicago. The running game, tremendous offensive line blocking that controlled the Minnesota Viking defense, and that was it. Chicago had it.
And we'll be back after this word from your local station.